Post-Millennial reports, D.C. Free Palestine shooting suspect charged with first-degree murder praised Luigi Mangione and posted "Death to America," says a report. Violence does not happen, but if it does, then it should, the account wrote in the past. The man accused of shooting a couple from the Israeli embassy in Washington, D.C. this week reportedly posted praise for Luigi Mangione and wrote "Death to America," as well as "I voted for Hamas" on social media. He has been charged with first-degree murder in the case. A criminal complaint states that Elias Rodriguez, 30, has been charged with murder of foreign officials, causing the death of a person through the use of a firearm, discharge of a firearm during a crime of violence, as well as 2 counts of first-degree murder. According to the New York Post, federal authorities are working to connect a social media account reportedly linked to Rodriguez, law enforcement sources told the outlet. Rodriguez, a socialist activist, yelled "Free Palestine" as police were taking him into custody, was arriving for the killing of Yaron Lishinsky and his girlfriend Sarah Lynn Milgram. The couple was set to get engaged next week. Scott, I don't think that there is a more well-versed authority on the situation in Gaza and Palestine, Gaza than you. But I think that it sounds like, at least the way that the Post-Millennial is reporting, it sounds like this goes beyond just the situation in Gaza. But I'd like to know your thoughts with the beginning. And before we get into actually, I want to mention that you directed me to Ken Klippenstein's Substack post, and I think that it's worth all of our viewers reading. He posted the manifesto that Rodriguez had made, and it was dated, I think, a week or so before this happened, so it's not, it hasn't been tampered with or whatever. There's timestamp, but I'd like to hear your thoughts.
Sure. Okay. Well, a few things. First of all, I'm not the best, although I'm really good on it.
Okay.
My guys are the best.
You're the most humble.
I truly could not recommend more highly Dave DeCamp, especially our news director at antiwar.com, who covers this stuff in and out every day. And is the best. Kyle Anzalone as well, and the whole crew over there at antiwar.com. And there are a lot of other people who are really great on it. So I won't claim that. And then I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought on what the second point I was going to make. But the third one, I'll just skip to. I'll see if I can remember that later. The main point being, first of all, it's obviously first-degree murder, premeditated assassination. So either life in prison without parole or death penalty, whatever the state, wherever that is, the jurisdiction. Oh, I guess it'd be a federal case. So,
yeah.
So death penalty's been reinstated on the federal level, right? So laters for him. I mean, yeah, it's terrible. And it should be condemned, especially by anybody who is sympathetic with the Palestinians. If the guy thought he was helping the Palestinians, obviously he might as well have been working for the Israelis as far as that goes. Something like this is the worst kind of thing somebody could do to discredit the cause that they support. But, I'm sure you're familiar with Saul Alinsky.
Yes, absolutely.
That wrote Rules for Radicals. Absolutely. And I'm not a commie, by the way. I learned this from the John Birchers, that Saul Alinsky.
Scott is very far away from communist. I'll definitely vouch for Scott on that. He's very, very far away from communist.
Thank you. But it is, I'm pretty sure it's page 74 of Rules for Radicals, because I needed the footnote. And what he says in there is, in all asymmetrical political action, the action is in the reaction of the opposition, right? So it's all about creating a conflict, heightening tensions, this kind of thing. So what he's trying to do, assuming the guy thought it through at all, what he's trying to do is get Trump to clamp down harder on pro-Palestine protesters and then get them to react harder against him, and just like trolling back and forth, right? Each other, heightening the tension and making things worse in order to try to cause the change. So that's the strategy behind, presumably if he had a strategy at all other than just angrily lashing out to murder these people. One thing is, only in the most ironic sense, you understand what I mean, that just everybody else got lucky other than this poor couple, that this guy could have set off a truck bomb and killed a bunch of innocent people. And I've been predicting this for a long time. This time it was a commie. On New Year's, it was an Army veteran convert to Islam who attacked Bourbon Street.
Yep.
Right? And now this all got obscured because there was that other veteran set off the truck bomb in Las Vegas with that weird letter to Sean Ryan and all this stuff that obscured the whole thing, what happened on Bourbon Street. And now they never released the guy's video rants. They say that he recorded himself on his drive to New Orleans from Houston, right? They haven't released that or transcripts of that, as far as I know yet. But I'm willing to go out on a limb and bet you $10 that what he was ranting about was the war in Gaza. And then what happened was, it's not even a war, the canned hunt, the slaughter of these poor people over there. And then what he did was slaughter a bunch of innocent people partying on Bourbon Street on New Year's Eve. So in other words, like, other than children, you couldn't get more innocent of civilians than just people out drinking, having a good time, doing nothing. And they got to pay the price for Israel's sins here. And the point being that, not obviously, as everyone should understand, not to justify what they're doing, but to explain that's their justification. That's their rationalization. And so supporting Israel the way that we do, it is not in America's national interest. And I wish Tim was here because I'd like to remind him, as I told him before, and this is, I think, obscured by a lot of smoke and a lot of other things. But Israel and America's support for Israel is the primary reason that America's own al-Qaeda terrorist mercenaries turned on the United States of America and hit us, not just on September 11th, but all through the 1990s. Their first attack here, it was, proto-al-Qaeda, Egyptian Islamic Jihad. Their first attack here was Rabbi Kahane in New York City, and he was a radical right-wing rabbi from the Koch Party, which the Israeli Supreme Court had banned for being fascist, and they assassinated him in New York City. And it was the same crew that tried.
When was that?
In 1990.
Okay.
And he had a really good Jewish lawyer that got everything narrowed down to just this very narrow question, and the whole investigation into the rest of his co-conspirators got all trashed. And the same group went on to bomb the World Trade Center in 1993
With Ramzi Youssef?
with Ramzi Youssef. And see, the story there, if people don't know this, it's an interesting one. The FBI could have stopped it. It's a side point, but it's worth making. The FBI had an informant inside the group, and the two agents working the case were doing a good job, but their boss prevented them from following through. And he cut the guy's pay, and he demanded that he wear a wire, which was impossible. He would have got caught. So the informant, who was going to make a fake bomb, left the plot, and then they brought in Ramzi Youssef, and Youssef is the one who cooked the real bomb. And they almost succeeded in toppling one tower over into the other, which would have hit a few more too. Could have killed.
Most people don't think about it because the consequences weren't
Yeah, it
catastrophic.
was 6 people were killed, so people just blew it off. And then, of course, the ATF raided the Branch Davidians church 2 days later. And so that is what took all the attention away from the first
Was
World
it that?
Trade
I didn't
Center.
realize they were that close in time.
Yeah, it was the February the 26th and the 28th there. A Sunday morning, they raided them because they thought, well, they'll all be at church, so we'll catch them by surprise. That's what you do, when you're the ATF. Anyway, and then all through the 1990s, these are the same group who they tried to kill Americans at the hotel, a Radisson Hotel in Yemen in 1992. Americans training the Saudi National Guard in 1995. The barracks, the Khobar Towers barracks, killed 19 American airmen in 1996. Then the Africa embassies in 98, the Cole in 2000, and eventually September 11th. And this whole time, this group of guys working for bin Laden and Zawahiri, they were motivated primarily, their whole propaganda, and never mind exactly what bin Laden believed, because he's a murderer, so who cares what he says? Right, as far as you don't take his word for anything. But the point is, this is how he recruited people, is he would point at America's occupation of Saudi Arabia in order to dual contain Iraq and Iran at Israel's behest.
See, I thought...
And American support for Israel in their persecution of the Palestinians and the Lebanese. Those are the top 2 things on the list of their reasons. And these guys worked for Bill Clinton. The whole time they're bombing us, Bill Clinton's still backing them in Bosnia, in Kosovo, and Chechnya, and he thinks he's cute. 10 of the 19 hijackers had fought on America's side in Bosnia or Chechnya.
Really?
Before they turned around and hit us.
Okay.
And I'm not going truther on you. I'm saying the Americans were playing this cute game where we get to use these terrorists to kill Serbs and Russians, and don't worry, we know what we're doing. But meanwhile, the things that they were doing in the Middle East that were motivating them to turn against us were still going on.
Yeah.
And so, and I'm sorry, you were going to say about the dual containment there.
No, I just it was like I'm aware of the situation where bin Laden was saying, the major reason why he was one of the major reasons why he was looking to attack the U.S. Was because of the fact the U.S. built a base in Saudi Arabia, and he considered that like sullying the Holy Land because
and it's bombing Iraq from those bases.
Well,
for the whole 1990s long, enforcing the no-fly zone and enforcing the blockade.
Again, this is something that my understanding was that Bin Laden was PO'd, that he didn't get to bring his mujahideen in to defend the Saudis.
That's
because
right.
He wanted to get the Saudis. He was like, look, you know my dad. You like, we're friends, we're family essentially. I just beat the Russians. Let me bring my mujahideen here. We will kick Saddam Hussein out of Kuwait, and we'll make sure that the Saudi Arabian make sure that the Saudis are safe. And the Saudis said, no, we're going to go with the Americans, and he took offense to that. He was like, what the F? We're my dad.
Too.
Yeah, and they built a base, which is a bad thing to the Saudis.
Yeah, and you can look. There's a hilarious interview of Dick Cheney by Bill Kristol on Bill Kristol's podcast, if you can believe it. And they talk about Cheney's entire career, except they don't talk about Iraq War II at all. For some reason, they just leave that out. But anyway, when they talk about Iraq War I, Cheney explains that, never even mind the Secretary of State. He promised the king, as soon as the war is over, we'll leave. And it was on that condition that they were allowed to come in the first place. But anyway, go ahead.
It's your sense that the Saudi royal family actually wanted the U.S. would intend for the U.S. to leave? They wanted that? Or do you think that the Saudi royal family was like, this is kind of convenient for us? Because it gave them the ability to say, they had the defense that the U.S. provides, and they could say, well, the U.S. lied to us, but what are we going to do? How are we supposed to?
I think that's largely right.
Okay.
But see, so the excuse was that that George Bush Sr. had encouraged the Shiites to rise up and overthrow Saddam, and then had stabbed them in the back and let Saddam Hussein massacre them all because they were being led by people that had been Iraqis who'd been living in Iran for 20 years, by that time, 10 years, and were on their way to inherit the revolution. So he stabbed them in the back and left them high and dry and let Saddam massacre them all. Then they said, well, now we have to stay to enforce this no-fly zone and this blockade. And so that was... And then Bill Clinton continued the policy. Now, when Bill Clinton came in, he stupidly said out loud, well, I think we could maybe normalize relations with Iraq. Well, that set everybody off. And so what the Kuwaitis did was they rigged this fake plot against H.W. Bush. Everybody still believes in this, that Saddam tried to kill Bush Sr. in Kuwait with a truck bomb. But it's such a stupid lie. And Seymour Hersh debunked it in an article called Case Closed. Case Not Closed is actually what it's called. And all it was a whiskey smuggling ring that they embellished into this plot against Bush because he happened to be in town kind of thing. And then once that happened, that was like the final straw for Bill Clinton to give in to the Israeli policy. It was Yitzhak Rabin's policy that he was insisting on. And it was his agent, Martin Indyk, who actually had previously worked for Yitzhak Shamir, the Likud prime minister, who dreamt up and inaugurated the policy of what they called dual containment. And the idea was because America had just beat up Saddam Hussein so bad in Iraq War I, he's now not powerful enough to balance against Iran. So America has to stay to balance against them both.
Scott,
then that becomes again the leading cause of these terrorists that worked for the United States then turning against us, knocking down our towers, hitting our Pentagon, and kicking off another 20 years of war.
Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.